Welcome to the Sunday Brunch with Ben and Ned. I'm Ben.
Ned. Hi, Ben.
And our guest today.
Yes, hey.
Hi, Nhien. Thank you for joining us here on this Sunday. It's not really Sunday. Don't tell anybody, but it's Friday afternoon.
This is filmed ahead of time. Sorry to spoil that for you.
But happy brunch. Thank you. And by the way, Sunday Brunch with Ben and Ned, find us on Facebook if you haven't already. And like us. And please comment there. Post comments and questions and topics, and we want to address that.
Yeah, give us some things to talk about.
Our guest today is Nhien Vuong.
Boom.
Oh, I messed it up already, right out of the...
Good try.
Boom.
I appreciate the effort always.
Got the Nhien correctly.
Yes.
Nhien. And people get us confused all the time. They think they hear Ned, Nhien, and they get our names in our faces.
Right, and we look alike, so
Exactly.
yes.
It's an easy mistake to make.
Formerly, you were an attorney and,
Yes.
and gave up a career in law to come to the lucrative career of ministry.
Yes,
Much
indeed.
more potential to make money. We know why you're doing it, and you're in ministerial school now, right? Finished 2 years?
Yes, I'm going into my final year.
Excellent, excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for being with us. We're going to talk about your ministry, your call to ministry, and plans for your ministry and ministerial school. And then in the second half, come back for the second segment. We'll talk more about arts and the spirituality, creative process.
Great.
Wonderful. So, Nhien, tell me, did you have one defining moment when you heard the call to ministry, when you recognized and realized that that was the path that you wanted to walk?
Yes, for sure. My call to ministry definitely had an element of build up to it, but there was definitely one day, it was just like your average day. I didn't have, lights coming down from the sky or anything like that, but I was at church, and it was at Unity in Marin, which is my home church, so I'm going to give a shout out to Unity in Marin.
Where's
Hey,
that?
guys.
That's in Marin County, California, and it's actually the only church to which I've ever belonged in my life.
Wow.
I am not, I have been sort of not into joining groups or institutions most of my life, so it's a big deal to join
Yeah.
a church for me. But
We don't know anything about
no,
that.
I don't
My first
That's a whole nother
church
talk.
was a unity church as well. I'd never been to
Really?
other religions and such.
Yeah. So it was a very big deal to become a member in the first instance. When I became a member, I became a chaplain within 6 months of that. Back in the days when they didn't have rules about, having to be a member for a year, things like that. And so it was just an ordinary Sunday, and I was glowing. I remember going to the
That is
parking
ordinary.
lot. Yes,
For
yes,
you.
an ordinary.
She's always
I was
glowing.
glowing. So I go out into the parking lot, and I sit down after a morning of praying with folks in the morning and, in the 2 morning services. And I just sat down in my car, and I went, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And when I got that call, it was just this, and when I mean this, there was an essence to it. It wasn't like specifically unity ministry. There was an essential quality about, I'm going to devote my entire life to spirit.
Wow.
That's what I'm going to do.
I've
And-
had similar.
Yeah?
I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. Not quite the same.
Not as excited about it.
There's a fundamentally different tone to that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And how long after that specific day until your first day in school here at Unity?
Oh gosh, that was quite a bit of time,
Okay.
actually. You would think, most of my life I've been this gunner, and everything I did, I would do faster than most people, and so it was kind of ironic that the thing I was most passionate about took me
your
like
sweet
about
time
6
with
years.
it.
Yeah.
It was on the grind, is the way the hip hop kids are saying it.
I've heard that
On the grind?
spoken around.
It's
Yeah.
got
Oh,
the
well,
hip-hop
that's new to
lingo.
me.
You're on the grind.
I'm on the
You
grind.
are on your
Awesome.
grind.
On your
I'm
grind.
so glad. So, I'm on my grind. Well, thank goodness for that. Heaven forbid I'd be on someone else's
That's-
grind.
Yeah, I know. That's the trap.
That's another
right
talk.
there.
So it took about 6 years?
Yes.
Because you got to take the classes, you got to...
Well, back then you had to have 250 SEE credits.
Before you began?
Yes, before you even applied, and so that was quite a few. I was practicing law full time, as a salaried associate at a San Francisco law firm, And my transition was immediate, meaning as soon as I got that call, I mean, it was like within days, I was at my law firm going, bye. You know? And they actually, I mean, I appreciate I had that kind of relationship with them that I could actually share with them that I had a call to ministry. And I was like, I'm excited, I'm going to go. And they came back to me, they were like, well, you're not in school yet, so why don't you work like as an independent contractor for us? I'm like, oh, okay. I was so enthusiastic. I was just like, I'm ready to go. So, and I like integrity is a big thing with me too. So I was like, I have to tell them. I have to be honest with them. And so I shared with them right away. They asked me, well, why don't you come back with a proposal as to like doing independent contractor work with us? And I remember I went home. I'm like, oh. You know, I have these lawyerly negotiation skills, and what am I going to do here? And so ultimately, of course, I went into the silence, and I'm like, I'm not going to negotiate. I'm going to determine what I really need for my next step, how I need to be supported. And I'm going to write that, and I'm going to propose that to them. And so I wrote this thing out about like how much I wanted to be paid hourly, which would have actually given me the same amount of pay that I was already making. And it would give me complete flexibility to work from home so that I could go attend SE classes. And so I'm like, okay, you know, I'm nervous about it because I was like, well, I'm like leaving them, and why would they, you know?
You're dealing with a bunch of lawyers. So
Yes. Those people. I'm hoping here to give lawyers a better name.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, good.
Couldn't give him a worse name. Oh, I'm sorry. What? Did I say that?
Oh. So,
I love lawyers.
yeah.
So you knew what you wanted. You came to them and said.
And I wrote out the proposal. I submitted it. And then I remember being in my office, and then I get a knock on the door, and the managing partner walks in. He's like, hey. I'm like, hey. And he's like, may I have a seat? And I was like, sure, you know. And he sits about this distance away from me, and he says, how does it feel to get everything you want? I'm like, woo! Yeah, it was
Nice.
that kind of
Sweet.
conversation.
What a beautiful moment.
That was a great beginning to my journey. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, but it took you 6 years
Yes.
to work through that process and actually come here
Yes.
to the school. Now, what is your experience like here? What is this stage of your path look like for you?
Oh my God, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, because with sort of a businessy professional background, I didn't feel like, oh, I'm going to ministerial school primarily to learn administrative things. I knew I would, but I really set aside this time as this is when I come into a greater knowing of my own wholeness. This is the time I get to do that.
That's
and
a good
devote
intention.
entirely to that.
Yeah.
Yes, and so naturally when you set an intention like that, as you two who are spiritual sojourners might know, then the universe starts to blast you with everything that's not that.
Here we go.
The universe gets on its grind.
It's
does.
on its
It does.
grind.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I have to get aligned with its grind because I'm not immediately.
Right. Well, that is when we dissolve any belief that our grind is separate from the universe's grind, and we become fully aware of the oneness of the grinds. It's
That's
actually
it.
one grind.
One grind.
There's just one grind.
One grind.
Yes, that's
One
what Charles
grind,
Fillmore
one
said.
power.
Sorry. So
That's great.
that's been your journey thus far.
Sorry, I have all these images.
Because, you know, ordination, that's a hard concept for me. It's hard to quantify and measure someone's readiness to minister to other people. What is your take on that? Not this school in particular, but just the concept in general. That's a very difficult thing to measure whether or not this person is ready to go forth and do this work.
I would agree that it's difficult, but I also feel like it must be done, that some sort of vetting process must be done, you know, just sort of out of integrity for the system itself. And it's going to be inevitably valuable. You know, you're going, it's going to miss people who are amazing, and it might let people out who might have some more work to do.
Let a few
You
slip
know,
through the
and I think
cracks,
that we
yeah.
have to grant that.
Sure.
Yeah, so I recognize both. I feel like there's an importance to a vetting process of some sort.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
They say, Charles and Myrtle right from the get-go did not want to create an organized church, promptly went on to create an organized church of some sort. Anytime you have a lesson or you have some thoughts or wisdom that you want to share, and it gets to a point that it's beyond like the handful of people in the room, and they're teaching other people, and they're teaching you
Some sort of structure
to say
is important.
this has my okay on it, or our stamp of approval on it. So if some sort of school is formed, some sort of organization,
Yes.
something's going to happen there.
Yeah.
So it's just a natural evolution of any movement.
And how well do you feel that is in alignment for you on your path? That the philosophy and the theology and the kind of intellectual book learnings of spirituality, how well does that serve you in your mystical walk with God, in living in the presence, which is the real criteria? Is
Are
that
you
out
saying
of
how well does
alignment?
ministerial
is-
school serve me in that?
Yeah,
Or
and just the path of becoming a minister and studying these things in a very formal setting. Does that strengthen your path? Is there conflict? How's your experience?
Well, I have to admit that ironically, when I first started school, my own spiritual development kind of got set aside for a little bit
Sure.
because of the academia
Yeah.
and all the administrative things that we are asked to learn.
Sure.
And unlike an SEE, where I felt like the SEE classes were more about nurturing spirit and transforming yourself, these seem to be a lot more about knowledge or
Training.
information and training. Yeah, so that kind of stunned me. But I really believe that in that setting, it calls you forward more. It calls my deepest intention forward more, such that I have to reaffirm my original intention, and I have to do that repeatedly, especially for someone like me who I come from a strong academic background. So immediately when I got to school, that sort of competitive edge just went like, I'm getting straight A's, and I am, but at what expense? At the expense of my peace, at the expense of my personal growth, whatever it is, like that's my personal relationship with the structure here. And other students have a different relationship because they may have hated school. I thrived in school. Others for whom school was a huge obstacle are going to encounter their own demons, if you will.
Sure.
So, but I think it's a good model for who are we in the world, in a world that may not always seem to support us. How do we know always that the world is supporting us in the midst of that?
And finding balance.
Yeah.
Connecting your own spiritual practice, experiencing, firsthand experience of Spirit, of God, of prayer, and the knowledge and book learning of how to help other people in their spiritual journey. That's a great
Yeah.
dance.
Yes, it is.
This is great stuff, and we're going to delve more into spirituality and other topics in our second half. Is there anything that you want to mention before we take a break?
Do you have anything you want to plug before we
Oh my gosh. No, nothing in particular. I'm just here to serve.
Okay.
Really.
We're going to talk
So,
about where you're going from here, your spiritual
Sure.
journey, and we're going
where
your
I
ministry.
think I'm going for so,
And
who
art.
knows?
and writing and creativity,
Right.
the spiritual practice.
Awesome.
All this and more.
Stay tuned for part 2.
We'll be right back.